Yo, what is good, YouTube? Krishan checking back in with another video. We are less than 1 week out from this year's Olympia, and I'm going to give you guys my top 10 predictions for this year's show. Now, these predictions are non-political, have nothing to do with what this channel thinks or what that channel thinks. And to any pros I have watching the channel, if I don't have you on the top 10 or placed high, it's nothing personal at all. This is how I see this year's Olympia going. So you guys are currently looking at everyone that is qualified for this year's show. But we can't forget Justin Rodriguez and Andrea Muzi, who are both qualified off of points. Beirut Tabani and Hassan Mustafa recently are out of this year's Olympia. Beirut was unable to get a visa and Hassan is suffering from some health issues. But I think this is going to be a pretty good video. If you guys haven't done so already, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So let's go ahead and get into these Olympia predictions. And we're actually going to start with Michael Krizo. Now, some of you may be like, Michael Krizo, 10th place. Actually, there's so many guys in this lineup. I'm going to go with the top 10 and 3 honorable mentions. Michael Krizo is my first honorable mention going into this year's Olympia, and he could potentially get in the top 10, but I see him right outside of that. Krizo has an amazing physique, probably has some of the best genetics in the sport, but I just don't see him bringing the conditioning, the polish, the posing that these other guys are going to have. Now, granted, if Krizo comes in 100% and he nails it, he can definitely be in the top 10. But as I've said numerous times, he has to bring conditioning we have never, ever seen before. He has to bring better posing and better posing endurance than we've ever seen before. And just to me personally, that's too many maybes to put him in the top 10. However, next year, Krizo may be a serious threat for even a top 6 placing. But I just don't think he can improve enough from Prague Pro to this year's Olympia to finish within that top 10. And another guy I have right outside of the top 10 is going to be Charles Griffin, the winner of this year's Cali Pro. Now, Charles has made some serious improvements since last year, and just from the Cali Pro up until now, he's said to put on 10 or 15 pounds of muscle. Also is in crazy condition right now. If this was any other year, I would probably put Charles confidently in that top 10, but this year's lineup is just so stacked. The guys I have placing ahead of him just have better structures or come in better condition. And it's not saying Charles doesn't come in peeled, but he doesn't have the grainy look of a guy like Ian Valliere. But Charles could definitely find himself within that top 10. Now, the last guy I want to talk about who is going to be right outside of the top 10 is going to be Rafa Brandao. So Rafa, Charles, Krizo, those are going to be your 3 guys right outside of the top 10 in my personal opinion. And I think a lot of people are really overlooking Brandao going into this year's Olympia. This guy has one of the best structures in the lineup. I just don't think he has enough muscle maturity to be competitive with some of these top guys yet. Rafa has definitely put on size, and size-wise, he may be competitive, but he doesn't have that dense, mature look to the muscle yet, and I think that will hold him back. So I have him right outside of my top 10. But let's go ahead and get into my top 10 predictions. So in 10th place, I have Samson Dauda, the winner of last year's Prague Pro. Now, I've had Samson up as high as 4th place. I believe Milos has him placing 3rd. But I just don't believe Samson can bring the level of condition and graininess as some of the other guys I have placing ahead of him. And Samson does come in condition, but I honestly think he just has thicker skin and it's harder for him to get that look. But with Samson being one of the best posers in the open division, he can definitely place higher than 10th. But I think conditioning is going to play a big role at this year's Olympia. And I've seen Samson in good condition, but I haven't seen him absolutely peeled. But then again, Brandon Curry places very high and he never really comes in peeled either. But I'm going to settle for Samson Dauda in 10th place. And for my 9th place prediction, I like Ian Valliere. And some people may think, why do I have Ian placing 9th? Why do I have him beating Samson Dauda and Michael Krizo? Honestly, I believe once you place those guys next to Ian, he's going to make them look soft. No disrespect to Samson or Krizo. Ian brings a crazy level of conditioning and is also very dense. And from looking at the recent physique updates of Ian Valliere, I would say he's probably going to bring his all-time best to this year's Olympia. As you guys know, Ian Valliere is coached by Patrick Tour. They've been working together for a couple of years, but they've never really met in person. And this is the first year that Ian and Patrick will be training together going into the Olympia. And I think that is going to be a big plus for Ian. And for my 8th place prediction, I have Andrew Jacked. This guy is very special and could place higher than 8th. Every time we've seen Andrew compete, regardless who was next to him, you couldn't take your eyes off of Andrew Jacked. So if you put him next to Rami, Heidi, Bonek, I mean, are we going to be able to take our eyes off of Andrew? But everyone I have placing ahead of Andrew just has more development from the side and the back. Andrew in the front double, front lat, ab, and thigh is almost unbeatable. Also in the front relaxed, but I still think he needs a lot of work in almost all of the other shots. If I had to bet on it, I would place Andrew in 8th, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up higher. Now going into my 7th place prediction, I'm going to go with Hunter Labrada. This may be another head scratcher for some of you guys, but Hunter is a very balanced bodybuilder, and I believe he's also going to come in with better conditioning this year. Also is a pretty good poser. And let's be honest, his last name is Labrada, so if it's close, Hunter's probably going to get the edge. That's just what it is. And if you guys are wondering, how do I have Hunter Labrada dropping from 4th place to 7th? I believe he's going to lose a little bit of ground in the back shots to the guys I have placing ahead of him. As we know, Hunter Labrada has higher inserted lats. But I do think we will see the best Hunter Labrada to date at this year's Olympia. This is the first year that Hunter Labrada hasn't had to do a show. He's had a full year off to just train and grow, and hopefully he's able to nail it 100%. And going into my 6th place prediction, I have William Bonet. Now, after this year's Arnold Classic, where a lot of people had William winning that show over Brandon, initially I was like, he's probably going to be second at this year's Olympia. But when I really thought about it, William placed second to an off Brandon Curry. Brandon is probably not going to bring the Arnold Classic package ever again. And if William couldn't beat Brandon off, I don't think he's going to be able to beat him when he's on. But don't get me wrong, I believe William Bonek is going to bring an incredible package to this year's Olympia. My main reason for placing him in 6th is honestly just the midsection. The guys I have placing ahead of William honestly have some of the best abs in the sport of bodybuilding. And in the front double, the ab and thigh, and even the most muscular shot, I believe those are almost 3 shots Bonek is going to give up to those guys just because he doesn't have the best ab separation. But if Bonek has somehow fixed that issue, look for him to place higher than 6th at this year's Olympia. Now let's get into my top 5 predictions. And in 5th place, I have the 212 Mr. Olympia, Derek Lunsford. And some of you guys may ask, why do I have Derek Lunsford so high? He's just coming over from the 212 division. He may not have enough size to stack up with these guys. When we go back to the Pittsburgh Pro, even though it was the off season, Derek was definitely holding his own size-wise. Derek has one of the best backs in the open division already. And as we know, Andrew Jack, Samson Dowda, both of those guys need work from behind. Derek Lunsford has shown us in the 212 division he can bring crazy conditioning. Michael Crizzo, he hasn't shown us he can bring the crazy conditioning. I think 5th place would be a great placing for Derek at this first Olympia. Why do I not have him placing higher? The guys I have ahead of him just have more dense and grainy muscle. Derek is only 29 years old, could use a lot more muscle maturity. That's why I have him placing 5th at this year's Olympia. And for my 4th place prediction, I'm going to go with the mutant Nick Walker. A lot of people didn't think he was going to win last year's New York Pro or last year's Arnold Classic. A lot of people didn't think Nick was going to take top 5 at his first Olympia. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't think he's going to move up from that 5th place position this year. But you can listen to almost any guru, any expert in the sport. Whether they like the physique of Nick Walker or not, everyone knows this guy is a serious threat. This guy is big. This guy comes in very, very conditioned. Potentially has the best back double biceps in the sport. And some of you guys may be wondering, well, how do I have Nick Walker over William Bonek? Well, I honestly believe Nick Walker is a little bit bigger and he has better abs. Well, why do I have Nick Walker over Derek Lunsford? When you turn those guys to the side and you compare Nick and Derek, that's going to be all she wrote. So going into his second Mr. Olympia competition, I believe Nick Walker is going to place 4th and move up from that 5th place placing last year. Now going into my 3rd place prediction, I'm going to go with the Persian Wolf, Hadi Chupin. And this video is actually from the 2019 Mr. Olympia. Hadi was absolutely shredded here. And it's a possibility that he does place a little bit higher than this. Now, every year, everyone says Hadi should be winning the Olympia. And every year that Hadi doesn't win, people either say it's because he doesn't speak much English, won't be able to represent the sport well, or they say he has something going on with his shoulders. I honestly believe that Hadi just needs more size. When we think about it, Hadi is the smallest guy in the top 5 at the Olympia. But whatever ground Hadi loses in mass, he can definitely make up for it in conditioning. And I'm not saying Hadi should chase mass, play the mass game, add 15 or 20 pounds. But I think just 3 to 5 pounds on this physique will make a major difference. But I have Hadi placing 3rd, mostly because he has a level of conditioning that no one else is going to bring. And if Hadi is bigger and better than last year, he could potentially place higher than this. Now going into my second place prediction, I'm going to go with former Mr. Olympia, current reigning Arnold Classic champion Brandon Curry. A lot of people are counting this guy out going into this year's Olympia. A lot of experts are counting this guy out. And I think that is going to be a very big mistake. A lot of people are still saying that Brandon Curry needs bigger legs. You know, guys like Samson Dowd, William Bonac is going to beat him. You guys have to remember that Brandon Curry was off and said to be 20 pounds smaller at this year's Arnold Classic. He beat William Bonac, Samson Dowd, Steve Kuklo, Justin Rodriguez. How do you guys think they're going to stack up against Brandon Curry when he's 100% on? And even though I think Brandon Curry is going to bring his best package of all time to this year's Olympia, as you guys know, you have to knock out the champ, and I don't think Brandon will be able to do that. So winning this year's Olympia and earning his third Olympia title, I'm going to go with Big Ramy Mamdouh Elsbaye. Honestly, this guy is just entirely too big. Big Ramy is about 5'10", 5'11", and it's very possible that he comes into this year's Olympia at 300 plus pounds. And there are a few guys that could challenge Big Ramy from the front. There are also a few guys that could challenge him from the back. You know, Nick Walker, Hadi Choop, and Brandon Curry. But overall, I think Big Ramy has overwhelming mass and also has overwhelming width. Big Ramy is 300 plus pounds, but also has some crazy proportions. For Big Ramy to be so big, his shoulder to waist ratio is pretty good. And once we throw the crazy quads into the equation, the illusion just makes the waist look even smaller. But these are my top 10 predictions for this year's Olympia, non-political. This is 100% how I think this show is going to go. Let me know in the comment section below how much you guys disagree with my predictions. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Look forward to all the coverage leading into this year's Olympia. This is probably going to be one of the best of all time. As always, I hope you guys did indeed enjoy this video. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm Krishan from Go Fitness, and that's it. I'm out.